What's going on, guys? In this video, I want to talk to you about a time, actually the very first time I ever made my way out to California, specifically to buy weed and at that time, drive it back home. So in my first video, I talked about a time where I was arrested for mailing 12 pounds of weed from California to Austin, Texas. If you haven't seen that, go look it up. Or I'll link it in the description or something like that. But that was an entertaining story. This one, however, was from, I don't know, 3-4 years earlier, I would say, somewhere in that range. I believe I was about 22 years old at the time. If you want to know exactly when this was, look up when Michael Jackson died, because my friend and I, as we were pulling into the state of California, we heard on the radio that Michael Jackson died. Yes, there was no Apple Music. There was no, we were listening to CDs. There was no GPS at that time. We were using a map or, whatever to get on, for our directions to get where we were going and everything like that. So it was a much different time. And, yeah. So anyways, let me tell you about this story. So I heard about, and at this time it felt like, again, now, this was at least 13 years ago, somewhere in that range. So marijuana was a much bigger deal, even in the state of California, but it was a much bigger deal in the state of Texas, and especially shipping weed or driving weed across state lines and things of that nature. Very big deal. Now, at this time, I think I had about $4,000, right, of my own money. I heard that, and it felt like this complete, mythical fantasy land. Because I heard that in the state of California, you could buy pounds of weed that were good pounds for $2,000 a piece. Today, that might not seem like a great deal. I'm not exactly sure on the market what it is specifically right now all over the country. But at that time in Austin, Texas, I had heard of pounds being sold for $5,000, $5,200. Those were more like indoors, but I'd heard for just decent stuff going for $4,400, $4,600. So as you can see, if I'm thinking in my head, I can get a pound of weed for $2,000 and sell it for $4,000, I'm going to make $2,000 even just if I get 1 pound here, right? So I was interested in that. And I was obsessed with that, to be real. And what I did at this time, since I was not too far removed from high school, just a few years, I had all of the people I went to high school with phone numbers still on my phone. I was texting them, and I would just say, hey, how you doing? Long time no see, blah, blah, blah. And basically, I would just get to the point of, do you happen to know anybody that lives in California? I didn't know necessarily at that time about the Mendocino County, Humboldt. I didn't know about all that stuff, and I just thought anywhere in California would work. First person I linked with and talked about this issue was a guy that introduced me to somebody in LA. LA was much more expensive. It was almost the same prices that I was paying in Austin, Texas at that time. It was maybe $1,000 less, maybe $3,000, I think was the quote. And I was like, I'm gonna keep, looking around. So long story short, I find someone in Santa Rosa, California, that was a friend of a friend of a friend, is how far down the line this went. And basically, my friend had a friend that was going out to California buying stuff and bringing it back. He was from Mendocino County. He didn't feel like doing any business with me because I literally had enough for 2 pounds, maybe 3, because I had some friends give me a little bit of money to throw in. But he didn't care about trying to broker that deal, especially considering I wanted to pay $2,000 a pound. Whatever. So we finally get to where that guy links me up with his sister or his sister's friend. I can't remember what exactly she was to him, but that's who it was or how it went down. And I talked to her on the phone. I'm like, hey, can I get pounds for $2,000? She's like, yeah. I'm like, are they good? And she's like, yeah, they're pretty good. I said, I'll be out there. I didn't know at that point how I was getting there or, exactly who was going to drive what. I didn't even have a car at the time. So my friend that introduced me to this lady, effectively, right, he had a friend that was willing to do the drive. And he was like, hey, I got a car. I'm willing to drive there and back. How much will you pay me? I'm like, I'll pay you $1,000, because the way I looked at it is that's like $250 a day, 2 days there, 2 days back. $250 a day. So he was like, all right, cool. And at this time, I don't know the game of like how to mitigate risk and all that because I've never done anything like this, So I rode with him there and back. And, I didn't even think like that's the whole point of hiring a driver. In my case, the whole point of hiring a driver was because I couldn't get a rental car, or at least I thought I couldn't, because you had to be 25, I think, at the time. And I didn't have a car. So I was like, yeah, he'll take me. Cool, let's do it. So, anyway, so I meet the guy that's going to drive for me. Never met him before, didn't know him. He's got hair down to his shoulders at the time. I'm like, bro, that doesn't look good, you know what I mean, for, I don't know, like, can you cut your hair? He says, yeah, I'll cut it. Next time I see him, which is like 2 days later, dude shaved his head. Basically shaved it. He's got no hair anymore. So anyways, I'm like, all right, let's go. Fuck it. Let's go out there and see what happens. I get a friend of mine to loan me. I think he loaned me $2,500. Whatever it was, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I do know this. Expenses and everything else included, I had $6,600 is what I took out to California with me. Not much money, right? But if you think about it from my perspective, is I can buy 3 pounds with that. Use the $600 for expenses, which was what I was hoping. And, I come back with 3 pounds. If I make $2,000 on each one, I make $6,000 totally, minus the $1,000 for the driver. It's worth my time for sure. You know what I mean? And I mean, you got to also keep in mind, I had never had more than $5,000 to my name ever in my life. My mom at one point during my entire childhood had more than $6,000 to her name. So I'm not coming from a situation of abundance in terms of my upbringing, right? So I'm like, fuck it, let's go, right? So me and my friend get on the road. And, as a matter of fact, let me tell you this. The night before we're supposed to leave, we were staying at some hotel, and I don't remember exactly why that was. Oh, because it was like 40 minutes away from where he lived. Long story short, we walked from the hotel to a McDonald's to get something to eat late at night. And I see this, it was just a quarter, right? In the McDonald's parking lot. And it was just like some crazy thing, right? Where the light in the parking lot was shining onto this quarter. I walk over and something in my head said, hey, go pick that up. So I walk over, I pick up the quarter, and it's a California quarter. I kept that quarter for years, and I brought it with me every time I would, do that. So I thought that was interesting. I felt like just a sign, somebody saying like, hey, because I was very nervous. Somebody saying like, hey, everything's going to be all right. You're doing the right thing. Go ahead and do your thing. So we get on the road, right? We're on the road now. We're driving along. We get, 5 or 6 hours away from Dallas, Texas, which is where we started. And we get pulled over. I have a vacuum sealer in the trunk, so that doesn't look good, right? He didn't see it, thank God. He didn't search the car. And I had the $6,600, which was in all 20s. You know what I mean? So it's a big glop of money like this, basically. It doesn't look good in terms of how a police officer might look at that, right? 2 young guys going across the country with a vacuum sealer and $6,000. So we get... Sorry, there's a car driving by. You're about to have to hear that for a second, but you'll be all right. So we get pulled over. He just comes, gives us a speeding ticket, kind of looks at us a little bit like he maybe thought about messing with us. He lets us go. No big deal, right? We're cruising right along. Now we get through the state of New Mexico, and then now we're in Arizona. Where in Arizona, we get pulled over for following too closely. I'd never even heard of that, right? We're on the highway. We're on Interstate 40. We're following too closely, I guess, and we get pulled over. Now, this cop is different. He's young, and you can just tell he was a dick, right? He walks up to the car. As soon as my friend rolls the window down, this guy sticks his face in the car and just goes and just breathes in, like just purposely trying to fuck with us, letting us know that he was suspicious right from the start, right? And he kind of asks us a couple questions, this, that, and the other. And he's like, all right, you guys are free to go. He writes us like a warning for the following too closely or whatever. So at that point, and I had already started doing this, but at that point I really said, hey, bro, we don't know each other. That's not normal. You don't take cross-country trips with someone that you don't know. So let me know everything about you. Let me know your parents' names. I want to know everything about you. I want you to know everything about me, even if we have to make shit up. And I want us to know a story of how we know each other, like, you know, when did we meet? How do we know each other? How, whatever, anything in specific details, because I know if we have some stuff on us on the way back, right? And at this point, I'm still not even thinking that's a full real like a reality. Like, could we actually drive back with weed? It really felt like that was not even something that could happen, almost, you know? But so we basically come up with this whole story. We have you know, we played soccer since we were 10 years old together, and we had the name of the soccer team. We had exactly what we were doing, why we were going to California, what part we were going to, what we were going to do there, how long we were going to stay there. Everything was hammered out. He was like, dude, this is really annoying. Like, let's just go, you know. And I'm like, nah, man, I think that we need to have a corroborating story just in case we get pulled over with the stuff on us and they separate us, because that's what they do. They separate you. They ask a bunch of questions, and if you don't align at any point, they say, hey, now, you know, I'm suspicious because you guys are lying. Oh, you don't want to let me search the car? Well, then I'll get the drug dog. Boom, game over, right? That's what they do. So, excuse me. So we come up with this exact story about everything, and we're driving along. We finally get to California. We get up to Santa Rosa, California. We're driving over the Golden Gate Bridge before that, and I'm like, wow, it's amazing. I'd never been to California in my life. We're going over the Golden Gate. We get to Santa Rosa about an hour later, and we talk to this girl, and she's like, yeah, you know, I mean, I can even get you pounds for $1,700 if we go up to Mendocino County. I'm like, how far is that? She goes, oh, it's like an hour and a half away. I'm like, let's go. Immediately, I'm like, I'm not paying $2,000. I'm paying $7,000. Like, she said that, I'm paying $17,000, period. Not paying $2,000. And she's like, she really didn't want to do that. I could tell. Anyways, she says, okay, whatever. She finally gives in and takes. All right, so here we are, two dudes from Texas that have never been to California in our lives. We are in the car with this lady now, and she's driving us up north to a town called Willits, if anybody's familiar with the Mendocino area of California. Willits is a very small town, probably population of like 6,000 to 14,000 people, somewhere in that range. And we basically believe it or not, it was the summertime, so it took us a while to actually find the weed. And I started to actually at one point think, man, I don't know if we're even gonna be able to, like, is this even real? You know, can I actually find pounds for between 1,700 to 2,000, which at that point, like I said, I was really pushing the 1,700 number, or less, of course. So anyways, and again, I'm looking for 3 pounds, right? So it was kind of laughable to the locals. They were just like, oh, he wants 3, like, get out of here, you know, because over there, they're really used to doing deals for at least 10 or 20, you know. It's not like other parts of the country. So anyways, we get up there, we finally get our stuff. We take, this guy actually ends up giving me a half a pound of weed. He was like, yeah, here's an extra, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this, you can have it. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, that's $2,000. I mean, thank you so much. We get the weed. I'm pumped. I'm stoked. It's not great, but it'll pass. Like, I can turn it into cash much more than I paid. That's my, you know, that's kind of my thought process on that. So we drive back down to Santa Rosa. We drop her off at her house. Thank you so much. We go to a hotel, and it was actually a decently nice hotel, like not you know, a motel. It was a hotel, and I had to pay a $50 deposit. We pay the deposit. I go up in the room. I seal up all these. Not all these, it was 3.5 pounds. Seal them all up or whatever. I'm like I'm so paranoid. I like seal them 4 times. I got Clorox wipes. I'm wiping them down. I was like so paranoid. You know what I mean? Like I wanted everything to be perfect, and I didn't want it to smell at all. The vacuum sealer that I brought with me, I literally threw it away in the trash can in the dumpster at the hotel parking lot. I just didn't want it with me. And so I tell the lady at the front desk, can I have my deposit back? And she's like, yeah, 1 second, let me verify the room. She comes back, she's like, you were smoking weed in the room. This is no smoking hotel. You're not getting your deposit back. And I'm arguing with her. My friend is looking at me like, dude, let's go. I'm like pissed about this $50 because, you know, I don't have very much money left. And by the way, just so you know, how did I make that trip for $600 in expenses? Well, we literally agreed to buy $1 chicken sandwiches from McDonald's the entire way. And that's what we did. Like, we didn't splurge not one time. So we would eat, you know, 3 of those a day, or I don't know, whatever it was. But point is, that's how we did that on the $600 of expenses. Maybe we had a couple $100 left over. I don't remember. But the point is, we we did well in terms of like keeping our costs as low as possible, keeping the bags of weed as concealed as possible in regards to the smell. We drive back now. Okay, so we're leaving. We're about 6 hours, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours away from Santa Rosa. We are still in the state of California. We're in the areas, if anybody's ever done that drive where it's just like all desert, basically. We see a cop speed trapping. We're driving, this cop speed trapping. We go past him. A couple minutes later, he's got his lights on behind us. We weren't speeding. We were going like 2 miles over because I told him, hey, go a couple miles over. Don't speed, you know, don't like be right on the speed limit. So we get pulled over. I am an idiot because I left my actual driver's license just because I wasn't driving, I think, and I wasn't really I don't know, I just spaced out. Left it in my suitcase, which was also in the trunk. I put the weed, the pounds, in a trash bag, and I put that trash bag into another trash bag with dirty clothes all around it. So it just looked like a trash bag with dirty clothes. So we're driving back. We get pulled over. Cop says, cop separates us immediately. He has another officer with him in his car with him. Maybe she was training, something like that. So he tells us, he's talking to me. Lady cop is talking to the driver. The guy's asking me, where'd you go? But he literally asked me, and I'm not bullshitting at all, 80% of the questions that we went over that my friend thought I was being crazy and we didn't need all these details, he asked us almost everything. Like, he literally, and we had the same answer for everything, right? Now, back to me leaving my ID in the trunk. He says, can I see your ID, sir? Just to, I'm like, well, my license is suspended, so he's doing all the driving, unfortunately for him. And he's like, well, do you just have the actual ID so I can, just so I can have your name or whatever? He said something to that nature, and I'm like, yeah, at this time I know. I left it in the trunk. This is not good, right? Because that's where the weed is, of course. So I'm like, instead of letting him ask me again, or instead of me saying, oh, it's in the trunk, and then him asking me to open the trunk, I say, oh, sir, you know what? My ID is actually in the trunk. Would you like me to open it and get it for you? And he's like, yes, because that's all he wanted anyways. He wanted to see what we were really doing. And so I lean over, pop the trunk, get out, and walk back to the trunk. And my friend literally turns like this as he hears the trunk open, and he's just looking at me like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, because he doesn't know what's going on in the conversation or anything. And that wouldn't make it much better. But the point is, I open the trunk, I grab my suitcase, I unzip it, grab it right out of where it was, hand it to him. While I'm doing that, he literally leans his face right over that trash bag full of dirty clothes. He smells, kind of discreetly. He's like, asked us a couple more questions, asked my friend a couple questions, and then he's just like, all right, well, enjoy the rest of your drive, guys. You're free to go. We're like, okay. We get back in the car. Obviously, I keep my license on me, so if this happens again, got the license on me. And we drive away, and by the time we couldn't see the cop anymore, my friend and I just start screaming. We're like, yes, yeah, just so, we thought we were going to jail. And at that time, weed was more serious. Even though we were in the state of California, we don't know, we're not super familiar with the California laws on weed, so we think we're going to prison. You know what I mean? Like, we thought if we were pulled over, we're going to prison for a year, maybe 2 years. That's what our thought process was. We actually had my friend had a friend at that time, the driver, who these people were driving stuff back from Colorado, and they got pulled over in Oklahoma, and they had to go to prison for like a year and a half. So like, we thought that was just what happened, So anyways, we're driving back. At this point, I say, hey, that's great that we got away with that, but dude, I'm done getting pulled over. Like, this is 3 times now. Granted, the first 2 times we're not with weed on us, but still, like, this highway, and we knew this going into it, they're looking for people doing what we're doing, right? Amongst other drugs and things of that nature. But I'm like, I have the big ass map right there, and I'm like, I'm finding us a different way that doesn't require 40, or at least is less of I-40 for as much as humanly possible. I end up finding this way that takes us through all this extra, touristy kind of hill, mountainish terrain, I guess you could say. And it probably took us an extra 6 to 8 hours total, but we took our time. We got hotels for 2 nights, you know, like we really took our time. And then we finally get to Texas, and we end up cruising right through. I lived in Austin, Texas at the time, so that's where we drove the stuff to. And when we pulled up to my apartment, man, it felt so good. Those last like 30 minutes when you're in Austin, you're completely familiar with your surroundings. You've got the stuff on you. You're like, just please don't get pulled over now, because in my mind, I'm rich now. If we just make it these last 20 minutes, I'm basically rich. Again, I've never had like any money in my life, so nor had my immediate family at that point in time either. So, or my entire life either. So anyways, we pull into my apartment complex, right? We get up to my apartments. I literally say, hey bro, wait right here. I run downstairs and I lived in West Campus at the time in Austin. So I run downstairs, and right across the street from me, I had a guy that I used to buy stuff from. I knew he would buy like 2, 3, 4 pounds at a time. And I literally just ran over there. We were texting, but I called him. He didn't answer the phone. I ran to his house, knocked on the door. He opens. He's like, hey, what's up, bro? You're back. I'm like, I didn't tell him I was going to California, by the way. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm back. I said, I actually have like 3 pounds if you're interested in anything. He says, yeah, give me like 30 minutes. I'll come over and check him out. So he comes over. This is right in front of the driver, right? The guy that did the driving for me. He knows what I paid for this stuff. He knows, you know, everything. He says, the guy walks in. He says, he looks at the stuff. He's like, it's all right. How much do you want for it? And I say, $4,700 per pound. He says, okay. He hands me, what is that, $9,400 or whatever. He hands me $9,400 for 2 pounds, walks out and leaves. And we're just looking at each other, cracking up. I'm like, here's your $1,000 for driving. At that point, I could see he was a little bit like, you know, I only get 1,000, and it's like that's what we agreed on, you know. But anyways, it was kind of an awkward thing because he literally saw that transaction go down. But I paid $1,700 for those pounds. I couldn't believe what just happened. It just felt like it was too good to be true. But anyways, after that, it takes me a little while to sell the rest of the stuff, and that guy ended up not being thrilled with what he bought, even though he looked at it and purchased it point blank. But after that, it's about a month goes by, and I'm like, I need to go back out to California to get more weed, right? But I'm not super confident with like this whole setup. Like, how long can this last? We're getting pulled over left and right, you know, and so I kind of was hesitant to go back. I ended up going back, but I'll tell you about that at another time. So guys, if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff, and I'll talk to you guys later.